All right, welcome. So this video is how to build new habits, right? So I'm going to explain first the importance of good habits and how you can actually build and develop habits over a long period of time and how you can really ingrain them so that they become permanent habits in your lifestyle, right? Permanent staples in your day-to-day life. And then I'm also going to give you a few examples of some good habits you could cultivate and why you might want to cultivate those habits. So without further ado, let's get into the video. When I was 15 years old, I started reading books, and we had this book fair thing. Essentially, each student got, I believe it was about $40 that they could spend on basically just buying themselves new books, right? We were able to buy a book and keep it and take it home. And fortunately enough for me, this was right around the time that I had gotten into reading. And I was looking on, they had a link for just like a general list of books that they had available. And I couldn't find any real self-improvement books on that. So what I did was I asked her if I could go on the Barnes & Noble website and buy a book from there instead. And she said yes, and I went for it, and I found Atomic Habits, which was one that I heard from a YouTuber that I'd been watching was a really good book to read. So I picked that one out, I bought it, and I kind of forgot about it for a little while. Then about maybe like 2 weeks, I'd say, before the school year ended. This was my sophomore year, so about 2 weeks before my sophomore year ended, I got the book, right? The book came, somebody dropped it off to the class I was in, and I got it. I was excited. I was ready to read it. So I started reading it. And this, Atomic Habits, was one of the first books that I had ever really read, really gotten into and read in depth. And very quickly, I realized not only was this the perfect book for me at this stage in my self-improvement, but the idea of cultivating habits that you can maintain over time, but that would compound the results that you're able to receive, whether positive or negative. That idea, that concept really clicked with me, right? And I realized very quickly how important habits really were. Right? You can essentially, by developing and by having the discipline to develop a certain habit, and by maintaining that habit over a long period of time, you can create any type of success, right? Just by having the right set of automatic behaviors. And so in my head, that meant to me, I was thinking, well, if I could make my training automatic, if I could make my work habits automatic, if I could make my reading automatic, if I could make meditation automatic, if I can have the discipline to turn these into my automatic behaviors and my automatic habits and the things that I do day to day without having to think about it, I can amass great levels of success within, a few years, right? And it clicked with me that this is probably one of the most important pieces of information I'd ever discovered, because now I understood why I was in such a shit place in my life, because all of my habits, all the things that I automatically did day to day, had compounded into bad health, poor mental health, a shitty personality, I guess you could say, right? Anger and resentment because I hadn't fulfilled any of my real goals in life, right? All of these things had built up and compounded due to the habits that I had, right? And by changing and altering those habits, I can create a completely different lifestyle, a completely different type of life, right? I can experience a completely different world, essentially, right? And so I learned very quickly that I needed to prioritize changing my habits. But that's where it got difficult, because the actual process of habit change, the process of developing new habits, is not straightforward, right? It does require a good amount of effort. And it is well worth it in the end, but it will require effort, and it will require an understanding of how habits work and operate, and how you can actually break, rewire, and reprogram these habits. So before we get into how you can build new habits and why they're so important, I would just like to let you know, if you want help developing your habits, if you want to learn more about building a optimal routine for performance and productivity, or if you just want more knowledge on self-improvement in general, whether meditation, training and exercise, diet, deep work and routine, as well as dopamine detoxing and sexual transmutation, all of this stuff will be contained within my Academy of Self-Mastery. So if that's something you're interested in, you can go ahead and click the link in the description to go to my Instagram, and you can send me a DM for early access to the program before it goes live. Early access will give you a discounted price, and you'll also be one of the first to be able to take the courses in there. So when we launch, I will have a routine mastery course and a dopamine detox course that you'll be able to take, as well as weekly live calls that you'll be able to hop on with me, and I'll work directly with you guys in order to help you through implementing these steps, implementing this knowledge, and if you have any questions or need any feedback, or if anything's missing from the courses, you'll be able to ask me questions directly and get all of the information and feedback that you need. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and send me a DM on Instagram. Just say, hey man, I'm looking for early access to the program, and I will get you sorted. So what is the reason why we should build these habits, right? Why is it so important to build good habits? Well, the habits that we have, these automatic behaviors that we do every single day, are the most consistent behaviors that we have. Meaning, these are the things that we are the most consistent on. If you understand the power of consistency, you will understand that by doing these things day to day, the effect of them, the result of doing the thing, will compound over an extended period of time. So if your habit is smoking weed, or it is scrolling on social media for about 2 hours every day, right? That's a small portion of your day, a small portion of your time. And in the moment, you may not notice the negative effects of it. But if you keep that up over the course of a few months, you may notice if the smoking weed example, or really either example, you might notice a decrease in productivity due to a dopamine deficit, right? And then a year to 2 years into this habit, you might experience real brain fog. You might experience a level of, you might not be able to compute a lot of things mentally, right? We call a lot of people bots nowadays, right? But what that really is that their brain is so deactivated from the amount of overstimulation they've had, to the point that their brain is actually starting to shut down as a result. It makes them literally dumber, makes them literally stupider. But that doesn't mean they're just brain dead people. It means that they've been keeping up this habit for so long that's been destroying their brain, that now they're living the effects of it, right? When people say, oh, that's going to destroy your brain, right? Drugs are going to destroy your brain. They're not lying. It's just that it takes so long to experience that most people won't believe, the adult in the moment, right? Your dad tells you don't do drugs because it'll kill your brain cells, right? And you're like, oh yeah, he's just saying that because he doesn't want me doing drugs. But in reality, if you do the drugs consistently over a long period of time, your brain will get smaller, your brain cells will be destroyed and deteriorated, and your cognitive ability will decline, right? That's a natural effect. Now, switch that out for exercise, right? An exercise habit. If you exercise for 2 hours every single day, you're not going to be ripped next week, right? But if you do it every day for 6 months, you will absolutely notice a change. If you do it every day for 2 years, you will look completely different from where you started, right? You may start skinny fat, or really fat, or just skinny, right? And very little muscle. And, 2 years down the line, you might look toned, ripped, lean, right? All of the goal aesthetics, I guess you could say, right? So you will look the way you want to look, is what I'm trying to get at. Versus when you start, you may not have the same level of muscle. You may not be that type of person, right? But after 2 years of keeping up on this habit consistently, you will naturally develop the effect, the result, right? And that result will compound. That's why people have these complete transformations, is because they stick to one habit over a long period of time, and then the result of that will compound and lead them to what they're now experiencing, which is that they're ripped, they're lean, they're an athlete, right? And naturally, when you have these habits, they also alter your identity. They change your identity. So if you consistently show up to work every single day and you're building your business with intensity and intention every day for a long period of time, you will naturally identify as an entrepreneur. If you're in the gym every single day, right, for a long period of time and you receive that result, that benefit, you will most likely identify as an athlete to some degree. And so the importance of good habits is that you can trust that your future result will be positive because the habits you have now are positive, right? You don't have to worry about how it feels right now or the results you're getting right now. You can know that your future result will be positive because these habits are the thing compounding in the background. Whereas the reason, for most at least, that being addicted to drugs is so stressful is because your tomorrow will always be worse than today. And that's a consistent trend over a long extended period of time. And so you can trust that your future will likely be very bad, right? And that is a very stressful state to be in, to know that your future will be negative because of the habits you have now is a very shitty state to be in, right? And so that's why it's very important, it's very crucial for us to go ahead and identify our bad habits and change them, right? Identify what good habits we could have and develop them. So that is what I'm going to teach you right now, is how to actually build and develop new habits. So the main key, right, the main trick when it comes to building habits is consistency and repetition, right? So when you have a habit, it doesn't matter how much intensity you do it with, when you have something you're trying to develop into a habit, rather. It does not matter how much intensity you do it with. It matters how many days in a row that you do it, right? A habit is not developed by intensity. It is developed by repetition, right? So if you go out and you exercise for 5 minutes a day, no, you won't receive a great benefit. No, you will not be getting ripped and lean and jacked. But what will happen is if you do this every day for 2 weeks to a month, you will develop a habit. And that habit will allow you to then exercise more with more intensity, whatever, because now you have this consistent habit of showing up and getting into the workflow every single day, right? So now you can alter the routine a little bit. You can add a little bit more time. You can add a little bit, you can add a proper exercise routine and follow through on that whole routine instead of just kind of going in the gym for a few minutes and going based off feel, right? You can do this now without the same resistance in showing up to the gym or going outside for your exercise, whatever that is, right? You don't have this resistance for showing up. You have the habit developed. And so now you can add anything else you want, right? You can increase the workload. You can increase the time. You can add a new routine. But when you try to go all in all at once, what ends up happening for most people is you don't stick to it. And when you don't stick to it, you can't create a habit. You cannot develop a habit if you don't stick to doing it every single day, right? That's why even though the intensity is what will get you the result, the intensity isn't the important thing now, because right now what's important is the repetition in order to develop the habit. And then intensity is more important. But the key for building habits is consistency and repetition. You just have to do it every day. You just have to do it consistently over a long period of time and allow that habit to be developed into a consistent and automatic activity that you do every single day. And the next thing is identity. So the next way to really ingrain a habit and make it like something that you can't lose, right? Something that you can't separate yourself from is to identify with it, right? So for, let's say it's work, right? You want to identify as an entrepreneur while developing that habit of deep work every single day, because what's going to happen is that identity reinforces your need to follow through on the habit, right? So the identity reinforces your need to maintain the habit. If you don't identify with it, no matter how many times you do it, no matter how much you repeat the action, it's going to be hard to make it stick because your identity is going to be pulling you towards another set of habits. But if your identity is pulling you towards the specific set of habits that you're trying to cultivate and build, not only becomes much easier to build and develop them, but they become more permanently ingrained into who you are. And so therefore it's easier to maintain them because, like I said, they become ingrained into who you are, right? They become a part of you. And therefore you cannot separate yourself from them. And that is the key to making them a permanent staple in your daily life. The next thing is the habit tracker. So the habit tracker is just a really good way to see how consistent you're being with each habit, and also to see which habits you may be slacking in more, right? Which ones you need to work more on, right? And that's important because now you have visual data. You have data that you can visually see and analyze that shows you how consistent you're being and how inconsistent you're being with certain habits. As well as it becomes an incentive to complete the habit each day, because when you see the habit tracker and you see an empty box on the same day, right? Let's say it's the 11th today, right? I see the 11th and there's 2 unchecked boxes. Well, what's going to happen is that's typically going to trigger me into wanting to check the box, and therefore I will go and follow through on that habit so I can go and check the box, right? That's just a small thing. You make a little game out of it, it makes it a lot easier. And by making a game out of it, you stay more consistent because it's more fun, right? It's more enjoyable. There's a tangible reward, which is the checkbox. It's a small dopamine reward, but it is a tangible reward. And therefore, you will become more consistent. So the next thing is doing it for long-term change, right? So what does that mean? That means we shouldn't be changing our habits with the intention of a quick boost in our productivity or a way to get success easily, right? Habits are basically a long-term process. Habits are activities that are meant to be ingrained in us for an extended period of time, essentially. So what that means is when we are cultivating habits, we need to be doing it with the intention of a long-term change, an actual transformation that we do not plan to go back on at any point, right? That's what habits are meant to be. That's how habits are developed, right? Is a permanent transformation of who you are into somebody else. And so these habits represent the type of person you're becoming. They will create the result that makes you more of that type of person. And they are the consistent activities that keep you in that state of being, that keep you identified with that person you're becoming, right? And so you need to be doing it with the intention of a long-term transformation, a long-term change, because you can't just, it's not like a monk mode where you just for 30 days lock in really quick and get all these results and then forget about it. Habits have the most results over a long and extended period of time, and when maintained through anything, right? So habits shouldn't be at such a high intensity that we can't maintain them through Christmas. If you can't follow through on most of your habits on a Christmas, like Christmas Day, when you have things going on with your family, when things come up in the background, then they're too intense, essentially, right? You want to be able to have habits that you can maintain throughout the entire year that aren't going to be hindrances to your daily life, that aren't going to be hindrances to your day-to-day. So what does that mean? That means when you are deciding on habits, don't make these habits something that you need to do now in order to get a result, right? Make these habits something that you want to develop into your personality, into your daily life, into your daily structure over an extended period of time, if not the rest of your life. And the next thing is don't overdo it, because consistency is key, not intensity. So it does not matter how hard you do it. For example, if you want to pick up a reading habit, but you've never read a book before, don't go and try to, in one day, read an entire book because you think that will boost your ability to read somehow. What you should do is read the absolute bare minimum that you can. So if you can read a page, do that. If you can read a sentence and that's it, do that. If you can read a paragraph, do that. Or if you can read the whole book, read the whole book, whatever. 20 minutes. If you got 20 minutes in you, read for 20 minutes. Whatever the actual minimum, just do that. And then do it with the intention of doing that today, and then doing it again tomorrow, and then again tomorrow. And if you have 1 page, after a week, maybe you try for 2. And over time, if you keep this up, what will happen is you will develop the ability to read the entire book, right? But if you just try to read the whole book right now, you're going to end up frustrated and you're going to end up giving up early, right? So don't worry so much about intensity, just worry about consistency. Do it consistently, and that will get you the result. That will get you to the point where you're ingraining it as a habit. And you build your skills best through consistency over long periods of time anyways. So I'm just going to give you a quick list of some good habits to cultivate and why you might want to cultivate them. So meditation is going to be good for brain health, clarity, focus, and then presence and awareness. So that means with meditation, if you meditate consistently over a long period of time, it will benefit your brain health. You will have more clarity. You will be able to focus easier, more intensely, and for longer periods of time. And you will have a deeper sense of presence and more overall awareness. Reading. Reading benefits your learning, right? You'll learn more by reading. Your vocab and speech, meaning you'll be able to speak clearly. You'll have a higher level of vocabulary, etc., etc. And then clearer thought patterns. So you'll be able to actually process thoughts in a clearer, more direct way because you're consistently reading, consistently learning other types of language, other formats of language. And so your brain becomes more efficient at turning thought into actual words in your mind. So the general idea gets processed and transformed into a thought pattern, which is the words that you hear in your head, which is what you then speak out loud, right? That thought pattern, right, the words that you hear as an expression of the idea in your brain, they become clearer, more concise, and so therefore you're able to process thoughts and utilize thoughts a lot easier. Exercise will benefit your health greatly. You will have more overall happiness and enjoyment with life. You'll have more productivity, so you'll be more productive overall in all areas of life, and you'll have more energy to output into those areas of life. And the next thing is journaling. Journaling is good for mental clarity, increased learning, right? So when you journal about something that you're learning, you're able to process the information you're learning, and then you also have a physical copy of the knowledge that you've taken from whatever it is you're watching or reading, and now you can reread just that section, right, which is just the concise idea that you took from the knowledge you're learning and then put onto paper as essentially your interpretation or an applicable piece of that knowledge. So therefore you increase your ability to learn and how much you're able to gather from information that you're learning. Next and last thing is processing information or emotions. So when you journal, it essentially gives you a place where you can process information that you're stuck on or where you can process emotions that you're stuck on. Now the last thing I have is deep work, right? Deep work will obviously increase your productivity because you're focused and concentrated on the work and the output. Overall fulfillment, so getting more work done, you'll just feel more fulfilled in your daily life. More success as a result of completing the work, and self-development, because working your hardest on something will develop you as an individual as well. So that is all I have for you guys today on building and developing new habits. If you have any questions, you can go and leave them in the comments below. And if you guys are interested in joining the Academy of Self-Mastery, if you want early access there, you can go ahead and go to my Instagram, send me that DM. And if you want, you can still work with me one-on-one. I'm still running my one-on-one program, my one-on-one coaching. So if you want to do that, you can also just send me a DM about the one-on-one coaching instead. But that is all I have for you guys today, and I'm out of here. Peace.